This is gonna be weirder than usual. Can't be helped. You called me. So here I am.
This is Jessie Faden.
Why did you bring me here?
She's
So
in front of a
many
tall
times
building,
it's led to
and for some
nothing.
reason, she seems to be talking to herself.
I found nothing.
This building happens to be an office called the Oldest House,
It's like
and it houses the Federal Bureau of Control. Without any idea where you're going,
on the wall.
the game starts. This is Control, a game that refuses to tell you much of anything that is going on. Released in 2019 by Remedy Entertainment, a very interesting company that loves making weird games. Firstly was Max Payne, an action game starring a painkiller addicted bullet dodging police officer that has occasional nightmare levels. Alan Wake, an action horror game where you play as a writer that fights off monsters with a flashlight. And Quantum Break, an action game where you control different aspects of time and has a story that is told through television shows. Needless to say, they never go for generic options. Control is no different. This time, it's eeriness and uneasiness that is at the center of the game. And this can be seen in the first character you meet, Artie, the janitor of the bureau, and the creepiest non-horror character I have ever seen. He calls Jessie the janitor's assistant and directs you to your next objective. At your destination, you find a dead body, pick up a transforming gun, and are named the new director of the bureau. Nothing I just said made sense, but that's the game. There are planned zombies, alternate realities, mazes that require music to be able to be traversed, and much more wildness. The only way to make sense of what's going on in the game is to read through pages upon pages of information available in the menu. But you could do what I did and just enjoy the wild roller coaster that is Control. If I was to describe the combat of Control in a single word, I would say fantastic. This is the service weapon. This is Jessie's one and only weapon, and you can think of it as a gun's Swiss Army knife. It can turn to a pistol, shotgun, sniper rifle, rocket launcher, and a machine gun, all of which have upgrade paths, all of which can be enhanced to increase damage, improve accuracy, and so on. Jessie also has telekinetic abilities. Every object in the level can be picked up and tossed at incoming enemies. She can also do this to herself, giving her a very nice slick evade. And combined with the service weapon, combat is extremely fluid and extremely cathartic. This is the Hiss, Control's main enemies. Jessie gives them this name because they are usually seen floating in the air and whispering/hissing weird noises. The Hiss is a supernatural being that has taken over different agents in the Bureau, giving them different abilities. At first, they're just common soldiers with guns that glow red, but as you venture deeper into the old house, you start finding newer enemies with more dynamic powers like buffs, like fellow telekinetics, like invisibility, and many more. The Hiss are a very creative enemy for sure, with a hint of sadness behind them. Aside from the Hiss, there's also the aforementioned plant zombies, there are altered items, and enemies that come from an alternate dimension called the astral plane. Each has a unique reason for existing, and each has a unique way of being defeated.
It's an object of power. Oh, okay. Oops. Oh, and it can launch things telekinetically through the air. To date, we've launched maybe 3 dozen pencils. And once, we even launched a cup.
You already know Jessie, the cool millennial that speaks to both herself and what may or may not be a spirit that lives in her head called Polaris. She is from a small town called Ordinary, where she and her brother ran into a projector that could open doorways to alternate dimensions. A lot happened in Ordinary that scarred Jessie, but the biggest one has to be the Bureau taking her brother into captivity for 17 years. This becomes her main mission and the player's goal: get to the Bureau and save her little brother. You also know Artie, the Finnish janitor that speaks in riddles and has telepathy apparently. If Eerie was a physical embodiment, this would be it. He knows more than every other character, but acts oblivious. If this was a Final Fantasy game, he would be the unexpected final/secret boss. Then there's Zachariah Trench, the former director that dies in the first 20 minutes of the game. Despite being dead, Jessie can still communicate with him through something called the Hotline, a phone that allows Jessie to speak with the dead. He also has many recorded monologues about his time as the director that can be found throughout the game and will sometimes pop up randomly throughout the story. Then there's Emily Pope, Jessie's main confidant. She has a constant positive disposition, is a certified genius, and is the first somewhat normal person you meet in the game. But if you ask me, she seems a bit too excited considering all the craziness that is going on. You first meet her shortly after you meet Artie and serves as your guide throughout all the crazy floors in the oldest house. These are the first batch of characters you meet in the opening section of the game. There are other characters that can be found in some form or another. Jessie will run into them as she explores the oldest house. Speaking of which, the oldest house is a very interesting location to set a game. It has a very claustrophobic feel to it. There are 4 main sections that can be explored throughout the game: executive, research, maintenance, and containment. Each feeling completely different from one another. 2 extra sections are added as DLCs. They are investigations and the foundation. This is where you can tell Control was made on a budget. Some missions require Jessie to explore the same area multiple times, but it gets around it by having very robust sectors with different connecting pathways that can be found earlier if you so choose, when you are nowhere near equipped to handle them. Another way gameplay is spiced up is with alternate realities, as I mentioned earlier. The first is the aforementioned astral plane, the dimension that holds all the supernatural entities of the game, like the board, Jessie's powers, the hiss, and altered items. The other way is with the Ocean View Motel. When you see a light switch, click it 3 times. And you get transported to a very strange hotel that traps you until you solve its puzzle to escape. While this sounds extremely frightening on paper, it actually serves as a nice change of pace to the very hectic gameplay loop. Jessie goes through all these different locales on different missions, but this leads you to one of Control's major problems: a general lack of direction. As a player, you need to pay attention to all the signs you see in the world, as the map can be very obtuse at times, and if you lack patience, there is no shame in using a guide to get to your destination.
Really makes you think.
Control can't just be weird in the game, it has to also extend to real life. Control was extremely buggy and glitchy on release, and was not well marketed in any way, but it garnered a bit of a cult following, leading to it becoming a decent success over time. It released in 2019 and was also able to get some Game of the Year award nominations, and even some wins. But if it released just 1 year earlier or 1 year later, there was no chance it will have any Game of the Year nominations, and because of said nominations, it led to more sales. And now, due to both its critical and commercial success, it is getting a sequel despite having very low initial sales. Control can currently be played on all current consoles and PC. If you can, please play it on a more powerful machine and enjoy the ride. But remember, Control is very weird, but don't think too much about it. Enjoy the exploration, enjoy the great combat, and the wonderful atmosphere. But if you choose to go down the rabbit hole, there is definitely a lot to find in the Federal Bureau of Control. Thanks for watching. and stay blessed.
We're in this together. You and I.